In India, most of this chili is not used in cooking. It's used to make lipstick.
Oh, okay.
So the red.
जो भी लोग scaremongering करते हैं और डराते हैं ये मत खाओ या ये खाओ and people just start following it. The point of doing this is exactly opposite of that. Maybe after watching this video today, आप जो 5, 6, 10 चीजों से डरते थे शायद आप डरना बंद कर दो.
Absolutely.
We're going to cook. One of your favorite recipes I've got to know is Bisi Bele Bath.
Superb.
Is fruit juice really bad for you?
An Indian person will not look obese but will be diabetic. There will be very obese people in the West who will still not be diabetic.
A microwave oven and an air fryer are villainized a lot on social media.
Yes.
Usually, to villainize anything,
Yes.
you just have to say that this will cause cancer.
The chair is more likely to kill you than the ghee.
Yeah. In a lot of your content, you say that eggs are vegetarian.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Vegetarian is a more weird cultural definition. Eggs are vegetarian in the UK, but they're not vegetarian in India.
Suddenly now, everybody started to think that is protein that much important in everything they're having?
Nothing you see on social media is knowledge, it's content. Even the nutritionist saying you should buy blueberries is making content.
So the best way also to eat healthy is try to cook yourself. You will start to understand your food better. And you will realize that, अरे यार इसमें तो बहुत तेल है, मुझे कम खाना चाहिए. Induction is pretty convenient. Pretty convenient.
Yeah. Solar and induction means you're cooking for free.
Yeah.
Then your gas cylinder can last like almost a year.
Yeah.
You cannot have elaborately, magnificently cooked, home-cooked meals and not exploit someone. So it's usually women that you're exploiting, right?
Even new parents think about कि हम अपने बच्चों को स्विमिंग जल्दी सिखाएंगे क्योंकि हमने नहीं सीखी. You also teach them to be a part of your cooking environment. Let them see how food is cooked. Tell them that this is a life skill, a survival skill that you need to learn. You being a boy or a girl does not matter, but you need to know to cook. You think that vegans are the most dumbest people, right? Now,
no.
Do you think that that's too harsh to, say?
No. So, okay. So one is that I think, if I remember right,
What's up guys, Sanjyot Keer here, welcome to YFL. आज एक Cook Along with Sanjyot Keer का episode है and it's going to be a very interesting one. He's an author of a book called Masala Lab. It's one of my favorite books. आपने उनको बहुत सारे videos में, social media पे, short form, long form में देखा होगा food myths को debunk करते हुए. Let's welcome Mr. Krish Ashok. Welcome sir.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Lovely. Absolute pleasure.
Let me tell you guys, this is going to be a little longer video.
Yes.
Obviously, we are going to cook.
Oh yes. What are we going to cook?
We're going to cook. One of your favorite recipes I've got to know is Bisi Bele Bath.
Superb.
So this is my recipe.
Yes.
But anywhere during this recipe or if you want to take this forward, you can do changes. You could put in your and we'll cook together. So
absolutely.
Yes. So we'll make the Bisi Bele Bath masala first.
Sure.
Okay, the spice mix.
Super.
So the pan is hot.
Yes.
Flame को कम कर दिया है कि it does not burn and we have urad dal and chana dal which we'll add and now we'll start roasting the dal. Yeah, you can also do it.
Sure. See the dals particularly when they brown, that reaction is called the Maillard reaction. Something that I keep speaking about. There's an entire chapter in the book.
And that is something that happens every single day in every kitchen in India, no matter which region.
Chapati becoming brown, puri frying, onions,
everything.
You name it. So this is actually probably the single most important chemical reaction that makes food delicious in the kitchen is the Maillard reaction. And the thing is that it only happens above the boiling point of water. So the moment you have water, you can't have the Maillard reaction because water will ensure that 100 say niche rehta hai temperature.
Yes.
Right? So it's only, that's why we fry in oil, right? Because oil can take you to temperatures above that, right? That's why your puri fries, it becomes brown. So it's a browning thing. So protein and sugar mixes and then you get that browning. So this dal is going to roast, become nicely brown. You know, when you put the chapati on the flame, those brown spots, all of that is the Maillard reaction.
Basically, जो भी हम पकाते हैं और हम जो बोलते हैं भूनना है in India, basically that is what Maillard reaction is.
Correct.
So from a science perspective, you call it Maillard reaction. And अगर हम इंडिया में बोलें तो हम Maillard reaction रोस्ट कर रहे हैं जब भी हम खाने को भूनते हैं. ये दालें भून रहे हैं. This is without oil, still that reaction is taking place. If you add oil to onions and then brown it, that again is Maillard reaction. That brings out a lot of flavor, a lot of complexity.
Yes.
Because also in that process, the sugars in the food also is getting caramelized, and then the flavor becomes deepened. It gives you more color, more texture, more flavor, and that is how we enjoy our foods today. By cooking it.
In fact, the easiest way for everyone to immediately smell the Maillard reaction is to walk near a bakery.
Yes.
That smell of the bakery is essentially the Maillard reaction, because atta or maida has no smell.
Right.
But just letting it sort of the yeast build those fermentation products, and then you put it in the oven. Then the sugars and the protein, the gluten, they react, and they produce those amazing aromas that we associate with fresh bread.
And that's, I think, one of the most beautiful aromas ever.
Absolutely,
and also, you were talking about water. That is the reason whenever we want to stop cooking something, जैसे अगर प्याज आपने भून दिया और आपको अभी लगता है कि ये जल जाएगा, तो आप पानी इंट्रोड्यूस कर देते हो कि वहाँ पर cooking process रुक जाए.
Correct.
So that's the reason that water
it lowers the temperature.
Yeah, it lowers the temperature, and then it does not let it brown further. It stops that Maillard reaction over there, or slows it down. So that's what basically Maillard reaction is. I also see this dal. It's like nicely roasted,
and you get that nutty
nutty aroma. A little more, I think, a little 10% more.
Maybe one small scaremongering that's worthwhile breaking while we're at it, right? Is that you'd be surprised at the number of people who think using this is bad. They think this is plastic. Oh my God, you're burning microplastics and all that. I think this is made of silicone, right?
Yes.
Silicone has a very high temperature tolerance.
Yes.
There is no way that if your pan is getting to those temperatures, you're probably burning food. At that point, the burnt food is the bigger problem.
Not the silicone.
Right? So I think, again, people worrying about the wrong things.
If I cannot live without one thing in the kitchen, it's this. I'll show you why. You see here how many I have. Just check.
Oh, I love these things.
Just check how many I have.
Every size, same here.
It's this. Every size, and this size which I use the most, I have like 6 of them over here. I have 6 of them in the back kitchen over there.
Absolutely.
See, this is the amount of silicone spatulas I
love.
And
once you use this, you'll stop using the other random wooden things and the hard ones.
You'll never use them.
Use anything else.
Because what this does is this gives you so much control in your hands.
Exactly.
You can just wipe the walls of the vessel so easily.
Exactly.
Also, when you want to transfer things, जो भी चीजें चिपकी होती हैं तुम्हारे vessel में, it'll just literally you won't have to wash it. Like you'll just have to like rinse it a little bit, and your job's done. It's the most amazing thing. So this has been toasted. So the dal, beautiful nutty flavor. And now we are adding in some spices. All right, we have some coriander seeds, black pepper, this jeera, this is cinnamon, and this is Marathi mogu.
Marathi mogu.
So a lot of people, who have not used this would not know it. It's also called as Kapok buds.
Kapok buds,
And it has like a flavor profile, a cross between mustard and black pepper in a way. It's a little pungent. And the aroma profile is very earthy. It's a beautiful spice.
Also worthwhile noting that this long pepper and pepper were more or less the only ways to add heat before the Europeans introduced chilies to India. Right? So before so once chilies came, these became a little bit less common, but they have fantastic aromas. And one more beautiful thing we were talking about, you cannot smell this at all if it's like this. You'd have to
only when you cook it, you will start to get its aroma and unlock the flavors. So that's important. This is how it looks, and if you get it, please use it in this spice mix, what we are making. Everything goes together over here. We were toasting the spices for pretty long, but I had my flame at the most lowest possible, so that's why we not
worth expensive stuff.
But we actually don't need that much time. We could have done it a little quicker, but a lot of things are going to happen like that because we are talking. So we are going to take that liberty of giving it more time. Maybe we unlock some better flavors.
Absolutely, this one. So it's a funny history story, right? I mean, all the spices that went in right now, right? Most of these spices sort of come from India. Coriander specifically is again said to have been introduced by the Greeks when Alexander came, right? Fun fact, the word coriander in Greek actually means bedbug. The Greeks found that the smell of coriander before you roast it is the same aroma that you get from a bedbug. Now, chemically speaking, they're both very similar aldehydes, so that's why they smell similar. Right? But the moment you roast coriander, it's a completely different aroma and so on. Coriander is fascinating because the leaves have a different aroma profile. The seeds have a different aroma profile, and my favorite, the root. And the stems,
it has so much flavor.
So much.
So a lot of people, when they meet me,
yeah,
some people say that you are the chef who's obsessed with coriander stems.
Exactly. I used to keep telling people, man, you're missing out. You guys cut the stem and
throw
discard
it.
Are you kidding me? I put them in the freezer and just use them in curries. The amount of aroma they add.
What I do is sometimes when I have a little thicker consistency of a gravy, with chicken or maybe even vegetarian paneer gravies, I'll just finely chop some coriander stems and then add it in the end, like how we add our dhania as a leaf.
Yes.
When you just eat and you'll have that small bit of coriander stem, you
crunch,
bite it, that crunch and that burst of flavor is amazing.
Yes.
So if you are throwing away your coriander stems and roots, please don't.
Please don't. And you have to freeze it though.
Yeah.
Because it will spoil otherwise in the fridge.
Roots you cannot chop it in the end and add because they are tougher. So you need to cook them. So you can add it to like soups or stocks when you are cooking the curry, and then you can maybe discard it, the roots.
Yes.
But the stems, you can just add it in the end, add it while cooking. It just adds in a lot of flavor. And it's like really fresh and very nice. I love it.
Southeast Asian cooking in Vietnam, Thailand, they use the roots as well. When they make the paste, and they keep it ready so that it's cooked and it's pasted, and they just keep the paste in the fridge. Superb.
Yes.
I think you should,
Yeah, we have like a couple of minutes.
Every time I see pepper, right? I mean, the sheer volume of history of India that's been directly as a result of this one spice, right? All the wealth of India till the British came, mostly because of pepper. The amount of, that we used to sell to the Roman Empire and so on, right?
Just to call it black gold.
Black gold, And then the fact that when we combine pepper and turmeric together,
the
benefits of turmeric
are the curcumin is absorbed better by your body. Yes.
It turns out that actually pepper has stuff that makes the absorption of not just turmeric, but many other spices and many other beneficial compounds are better absorbed in the presence of pepper. So
like how turmeric is also used, throughout India. And then sometimes it's said that there are a lot of things which like Indians don't, some diseases that Indians don't suffer with is because of the consumption of turmeric every single day in our food. Or maybe the mix of spices, right? Or there would be like a certain spice mix for the winters versus a certain spice mix in the summers. Like for my home, my grandmother would always make garam masala. But in the summer, she would add fennel to it. Right? And in the winter, she would not add it. And she would always tell me, "Sauf thanda hota hai body ke liye, isliye main add kar rahi hu कि वो spice mix हमारे में गरम नहीं है." So from a science perspective, how much of this is true? That there are certain things that our grandmothers or grandfathers used to think or do, which are right. In a certain way. Maybe it was intuitive, maybe they learnt about it. But those things also stand true with the science backing we have today. And some things don't exist. So if you could...
So I think the single most common misconception people have about science, we end up having this opinion that what our grandmothers did was not science, and somehow science just started in the last 200 years and only that is the truth. I think that's the wrong way to think about it, right? Science is a process. It's not something that scientists do, right? It's a method to arrive at the verifiable truth. And in the history of mankind, in the last 200 years, we have made progress in that final part of verification. Our grandmothers, you have to remember that every day in the kitchen, it's like a chemistry lab, it's a physics lab. And for thousands of years, every act of cooking is an experiment. 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, somebody tried something and they said, yeah, this is too bitter. This is good. If I eat this during summer, it's good for me. If I eat this during winter, it's good for me. Imagine every house, every person is conducting an experiment, right? So people forget that everything about your tradition is the first part of science, which is the experiment. People confuse the last part of inferring from that data, writing a white paper and publishing it as the only thing that's science. It is not, right? While you should not blindly believe everything that you did in the past, you will find most things that we do in the kitchen are backed by simply thousands of years of we know this works and it won't harm you, right?
Like what you are trying to say is basically because people have doing things in a certain way over time, they realize doing certain things were good for them. Certain things were bad.
Yes.
Over time, we have evolved.
Yeah.
Like for an example, we were talking about Maillard reaction.
Yes.
So when people got hold of onions, they tried to eat it like that. They then maybe tried to cook it.
Yes.
Then they introduced oil. They boiled it.
Correct.
And they realized doing this in certain ways changes how it tastes.
Exactly.
How the texture changes.
Right.
While there is science to it.
Yes.
But they were doing it because it worked in a certain way.
Exactly.
So it was not made in a laboratory.
Yes. It's made in the real world.
Real world.
And you learn through thousands of experiments, right? And the other interesting thing is that people also forget that the world we lived in 1,000 years ago very different. India did not have refrigeration 100 years ago.
Yes.
So many of the food safety practices become part of your cooking practices. You don't mix milk and something. You don't mix this with that. You eat this only in summer. You eat this only in winter. You have to realize, see, people don't like being told complex theories. They like being given, do this, don't do that. Habits and rituals are easier to remember and follow. You don't want to remember a science lecture.
Yes.
So historically, we would just transmit knowledge by telling people, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. When you think about which of those practices evolved at a time when you had no food preservation, had no refrigeration in a hot tropical climate, milk spoils easily, meat spoils easily, right? So you realize that many of the combination rules, you should eat food very quick, you must not eat leftover food, were all food safety rules. But the moment you have a refrigerator, the moment you have that kind of thing, you have pasteurization, all of that, people must be able to say, yeah, this I can eliminate now. It doesn't mean you disrespect your past.
Right.
It just means that you're actually respecting it by moving it forward. You respect the past because they were living in a different time. The refrigerator nahi tha. Right? And now you're moving forward, so you evolve with it, right? Because the best way to respect your tradition is to make small changes with time as things evolve, right? If you make it frozen, then you have a problem.
Like for an example, people used to cook with fire before, with wood before. Now we are cooking with LPG, we are cooking with electricity. We have so many different, fuels to cook with.
Yes.
Would you go back and now say that, because we have evolved over time, we will cook with wood fire only because it was done before? No. You would evolve with time and start using better things. Yes, there are times where you need to ask a why.
Yes.
And if you have that time, you ask that why research about it and know about it a little more than rather just, saying that. And in a lot of times, especially in India, we think things which take more time are better.
Yes.
And that is why we don't want convenience.
Correct.
Like for a pressure cooker, like for a microwave oven, like for so many other things where we feel that, okay, things which are cooked quicker are maybe not good for us rather. But it's actually sometimes the other way around.
It is.
Right?
So, I mean, it's also, see, the interesting thing is that the history of convenience is also a history, particularly in India, of women breaking out from just being homemakers into being professionals and so on, right? So that is also another thing we have to consider. And the other important thing is that my mother used to say that my great-grandfather used to say only wood fire, you're not allowed to use LPG. My grandfather would say you're allowed to use LPG but no pressure cooker. It has to be this thing. And he would say chutney has to be ground only
on the silbatta, not the mixer.
Right? And because, and so on. But my father's generation, time, convenience, his wife was working, none of those were considerations. So you can see in just a few generations that these ideas
have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are people who are still stuck in time. A beautiful, movie, The Great Indian Kitchen.
Oh, absolutely.
It's such a beautiful film where they have exactly shown the same thing what you're talking about, where, the man in the family, he's wanting the women in the family to cook rice on wood fire.
See, if everyone shared cooking responsibilities, men and women shared cooking responsibilities, no one would be obsessed with cooking slow. Then we would all want everything fast. So when somebody is doing the labor for you, then you are happy to exploit it.
Yeah, because whenever men cook in the kitchen, occasionally, they would want everything that takes time to be done before. They would want the woman to cook, cut the vegetables. Do all the preparation, make the ginger garlic paste, everything, and then they'll go and they'll stir a little bit and they would like, today I did the cooking. And then they'll leave around a much bigger mess. And they would want, the other people in the family to clean it.
And other thing, my wife keeps saying that every time you cook, I find a new appliance you bought. Right? I've filled my kitchen with air fryer, this frothing device, sous vide, and so it's just that I think we are happy to embrace automation when we have to do the labor.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah, but this also is something that we are talking about, a larger section of the society.
Yeah.
There are in metro cities, in a lot of places where now there are, couples who are working, both are working, they have lesser time. There was meal prep culture only in the Western world, but today in India also, you won't believe, but I have so many messages every single day that chef, can you now teach us how to do meal prep in India?
Yeah.
How can we do it with our food? Because we don't have the time.
Oh, yes.
We don't have the money to spend on a cook.
Yes.
We want to save money. And the only way for us to have home cooked meals is to do meal prep.
Yeah.
By the way, what meal prep is, a lot of people who are watching us would not know.
Yeah.
Meal prep is a way where you can cook food in advance and then store it in batches and you freeze it.
Yes.
And then whenever you want to cook with it, you'll remove, you'll thaw, you'll reheat it, and you will cook.
Yeah.
There are certain things which you cannot do with meal prep, like once you thaw it, once you heat it, you don't put it back again and all of that.
Yes.
So there is a way to do it, but there is a very safe and a very normal way to do it, and you can eat healthy even doing that.
Oh yes.
Which we sometimes perceive where that food gets spoiled when it is kept because refrigeration was not there.
Not there, yes. So it's that fear. And so, people sometimes think that we are adopting a Western thing, right? And we think that they meal prep, but Indians don't and so on. I urge people just to observe NRIs. The very same people who in India would not do meal prep. The first thing they do when they reach the West and they realize they can't have, help and cooks and all these other assistants and both have to work, they immediately embrace meal prep. So NRIs are the bridge. Forget the West. Indians in the West have embraced meal prep. And once they come back, they're like, oh, I'm okay now.
Yeah.
Right? So they cut vegetables and keep, they cook a little bit of extra batch of dal so that they don't have to boil the dal.
Boil it again.
Right? Yeah. And pretty much you can do meal prep for so many things, and even base gravies themselves you can then freeze. Like an onion tomato masala, right? You can slow cook it properly, puree it, and put it in your these ice cube type trays. Then take two of those things, and trust me, you can whip together a sabji in no time.
Right. I have a follow-up question on that, but हमारा masala नहीं बनेगा. But I think we'll get through it. And I'm going to add a little bit of oil to this.
Yes.
A little bit.
Particularly sensitive to burning as well. Yeah.
So a lot of people, when you talk about your relatives living in the US or the Europe or anywhere, and they would be, what a life they are living. They're earning more, but they're eating stale food. This is the most common thing that we living here in India would talk about.
Correct.
We sometimes forget we have the convenience over here of, house helps at a very low cost. Yeah. That is why we say that, okay, we want to do everything fresh at home.
Yes.
From a science perspective, how are these people wrong about saying that they are having stale food and they are having a less nutritious and maybe a lesser healthier life?
Correct. When people say that if I put something in the fridge and eat it next day, it is losing nutrition. So your immediate question should be, what nutrients is it losing? Is it losing carbohydrate? No. Is it losing protein? No. Is it losing fats? No. Amongst the micronutrients, is it losing fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, K? No. Is it losing minerals? No. They're not going anywhere. The only thing that you lose when food is just kept for a while is typically vitamin B and C, because those are the water-soluble vitamins. Again, vitamin B and C are the easiest things to add back to food. You just add a little bit extra dhania garnish, squeeze some nimbu on your dal that you've kept, you've got it back. So I think the first thing people have to realize is that nothing is getting lost in the fridge, right? You're going to lose more when you reheat it on the pan, which is why I tell people consider the microwave, because science shows us that you lose the least amount of heating related loss in the microwave, right? As opposed to in the open pan.
Right.
Trust me, when you eat your leftovers, you're eating healthy for a couple of reasons. If you don't have time, you're going to order out. And that food will have 3 times more calories, more fat, more salt. Your leftover dal is going to be an absolute much more healthy for you. The second thing is that many people know this. Certain dishes, in fact, even the Bisi Bele Bath that we're about to make, right? Biryanis and fish curries and chicken curries, every single one of them improves with time. The flavors improve with time. It's not a health thing.
Why does that happen? Because a lot of times, we'll see our parents saying that, biryani the next day is better, mutton curry the next day is better. In fact, like Goa, there's a specific thing, kalchi kodi, which is yesterday's curry, eaten the next day in the morning with poi, like a bread.
Fish curry, the next day is fish curry,
So what happens to the food that it tastes better the next day?
A couple of things happen. So first is that the salt gets more evenly dispersed into more parts. So if you have a dish that is a little bit more, there are bigger pieces, not just a pure gravy, there is uneven salt dispersion in the larger objects. Over time, the salt gets evenly dispersed, so every bite has perfect amount of salt. The other thing that happens is that spices, again, you have to remember, have many layers of aromas, right? So there is a top note, which is what you immediately smell, right? You know a biryani, it's the top note of the cardamom and a few things that you smell, right? But a cardamom has base notes that come out only when the top notes are dissipated. So when you eat fresh khana, you are smelling top notes, like a perfume's top note. That's why when you say, men will wear perfume and they will think that, oh, this smells nice. But then people with more sensitive noses, typically your spouses, will tell you that, oh, this smelled better on the longer run. Because the base notes come through after the top notes have dissipated. Again, you taste the better part of the spice when you eat it later. So this is, I think, why I think leftover food is very underrated. And it's everywhere else in the world, people absolutely eat it with no problems.
Right. So if you are storing your food well,
yes,
if you are refrigerating it in time,
you're putting it airtight, you're putting
everything.
It properly, yes.
So there is a way to do it,
yes,
right? It's not that you have kept something on the counter for like about 10 hours and then you keep it in the fridge and then you say it's healthy. It's not. At a certain point, it will become poisonous if you just let it be outside.
There is a time limit, and you will know it. You will smell it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's many Indian dishes can often stay up to a week in the dish, but it varies. Rice, for example, you should ideally not keep boiled rice for more than like 24 to 36 hours sometimes, right? After that, there's bacterial infection that can happen. Most of the things, sour curries, gravies, you can keep for a good amount of time. If it has meat, you want to avoid the risk of too long because while vegetarian dishes ferment in beneficial ways, meat does not. It ferments in poisonous ways. So you want to be careful about what you're storing for how long and so on.
Right. What also I always love about this thing and what you also said is that if you have home cooked meals in your freezer, that would be much better than a pizza or a burger which is ordered from outside.
Even the dal you cook at home has 1/3 the calories. A restaurant is incentivized to make it tasty by adding more fat. There's a double tadka, there's more salt, there is more sugar. That's how the restaurant business works. I'm not blaming them. You will not buy if they make it taste like ghar ka.
Yeah.
You want it to really just assault your senses, right? Yeah.
And see, no restaurant tells you that come to us every single day. You're going there for an occasion, right?
Absolutely, yes.
I think, see, I belong to that industry and you come there, you enjoy your food and that is an occasion. On an occasion, you can do everything. Like, desserts are not bad for you, but portion control is important. You cannot be like, I'll eat a half kg cake every single day. You have it once in a while, have it in a portion controlled manner and you will live a healthy life and you are exercising, etc., and you are not having health conditions. That's another thing. But then, no restaurant is urging you to come every single day to them.
Absolutely,
right? So you enjoy that food once in a while.
Yes. One little fun fact about this chili, right? The Bedigi chili.
I think this is done.
Right. This chili is quite fascinating because this is all color and not spice. Right? In India, most of this chili is not used in cooking. It's used to make lipstick.
Oh, okay.
So the red color in the lipstick actually comes from the Bedigi chilies.
From chilies?
Yeah, from this chili. You don't want to use the other one. Otherwise it will burn your
spice. Oh, I did not know this.
Yes.
a lot of people would buy Kashmiri chili, and a lot of stores will sell you Bedgi chili. Kashmiri chilies are not available in abundance in different parts of our country.
Yes.
So if you go to Kashmir, or if you go to Jammu even, and you see the Kashmiri chili, that will look very different, to how this looks. It's
and
more,
it is a different flavor.
This has much more crevices and everything. That's much more flatter.
Yes.
It looks a little different.
Correct.
You still get it in every part of India. It's not that you don't get it. But 90% of the times you're sold Bedgi over
as Kashmiri chili.
As Kashmiri chili. So that's a fact.
It comes from Karnataka. Yes.
So what we did while talking is we added some Bedgi chilies with some oil on a very low flame. We've just toasted them.
Yes.
These have been toasted.
Super.
I am just going to add this over here, and there's some khaskhas, methi seeds, and some coconut.
Yes.
I am just adding all of these together, and we are just going to lightly roast them. The reason why we are just going to lightly roast them, these burn very, very quickly.
Yeah, the khaskhas poppy seeds are going to burn
the poppy
quickly.
seeds. Yeah. So we'll just roast it a little bit, and I think this is
this is good.
Almost done.
Yeah.
And I'm going to switch this off, and I'll add it.
Yeah.
And now once we have done, we're just going to add some
hing
in the end over here. It has some residual heat.
Yeah.
And it just needs to...
So quick sort of, history lesson here is that the chilies came from Mexico. The hing came from Afghanistan. It still does, right? Hing is not grown in India, right? And I always find it fascinating. Hing has flavors very similar to onion and garlic. And because of religious restrictions, Buddhist, Jain and Hindu against onion and garlic,
they use hing.
Right. I like that about India, that we love our food so much. Religion can tell me, you should not eat onion garlic. I will go out of the way to find something that tastes like it in Afghanistan.
In fact, very recently there was this, potatoes growing on trees.
Yes.
And on reels, it just went viral that, and everybody started to ask, like Jains started to ask that, can we eat this? Because also one thing, when we talk about this came from here, this came from here, like even carrots and potatoes,
actually everything
tomatoes,
here is European.
So
potato, carrots.
But people take it in a very wrong way. Right?
Yes.
People who are saying that this is not from India and came from elsewhere are not saying that they are less Indian, right? The beauty about it is that whatever came to India, I think Indians use it in the best way possible.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody else in the world cooks potatoes better than us.
Absolutely.
We can cook potatoes in a million ways. Everywhere else, it's majorly French fries or a couple of French dishes maybe, or a bake or something like that. But in India, you will have like a vada pav, you will have like a jeera aloo, you will have like a samosa.
Aloo gobi, I mean, so many.
Everything. And I think that's the best use of that ingredient.
Exactly.
And that is how beautiful our food culture is. That we find the best possible ways to utilize an ingredient in a manner that the world could not think about.
Absolutely.
So that's the beauty of our country. So we don't need to be worried about, that this does not belong to India, but it's no harm knowing where it came from.
The potato can come from wherever. The French beans can come from France. The carrot can come from Europe. It does not matter. But we Indianize it. What we do to it is what makes it Indian.
Right. Absolutely. And this is, the spices have cooled down.
So
now we can, grind them in a spice grinder.
One of my favorite devices actually. And you get to make fresh spice mixes just in the amounts you need. And you don't have to always keep buying dabbas and put them in the, and then spices oxidize.
Usually what we do is we'll keep it in the box it comes in. You put it in a airtight glass container. And just put it in the fridge. So you won't lose any of that aroma. Because a lot of aromas are volatile. And over time, if you are just cutting off the packet and you are just keeping it like that, it's just going to then smell like sawdust later on. So you need to,
so it's just sawdust actually.
So you need to actually lock the flavors in. So if there's this spice mix, we won't use the whole thing right now. So the leftover you can keep it in an airtight container, put it in the fridge, and even if you put it in the freezer, it won't freeze your spice. It in fact will...
There's no water. There's not much water.
So it will increase the shelf life of the spice. So just put everything Yeah, so the powder is ready.
Superb.
The masala.
Yeah.
So this is what we'll, add it in the end. We have some Sona Masuri rice.
Yes.
And we have tur dal, which has been soaked.
Yeah.
Now, there could be a mixture of dals also, which could be used.
Yeah.
Like you could also add a mix of moong dal to it.
And again, the ratio of rice to dal also, I've seen varies.
Yeah.
In my personal experience, the best tasting has been 1:1.
1:1. I also do that. It's same, 1:1.
Of course, but some restaurants will use a little bit more rice for cost reasons. But but I think the 1:1 ratio really, I think that makes it you will not overeat that.
Yes.
The more dal it is, the less you will eat.
Yeah, because it make you more
Makes you
fuller.
feel heavy. Yes.
Yeah. So this has been washed and soaked for a couple of hours. You could also do it for like about half an hour.
Half an hour is enough, for tur dal and rice.
For tur dal. Rice also, I think, cooks better when soaked a little bit.
Yes. Cooks more evenly.
Evenly.
Yeah.
So we just soak it and we add this to the pressure cooker.
Yep.
So we're doing some potatoes.
Potatoes, yep. The one thing that I think I've seen Karnataka, they would specifically add uniquely to the vegetable they would add to this is the turnip, shalgam.
Yeah, shalgam. Yeah.
It immediately gives it a very unique flavor.
Yes.
Correct, yes.
So potatoes, carrots and beans which have gone into this.
Yeah.
We have water over here.
Yeah.
So we'll do a little more water than your usual rice cooking. So usually you do twice. You can do like 3 times or maybe 3.5 times.
Correct, yeah.
Basically you're making a khichdi over here.
It is a khichdi.
Yeah.
So in India has a rice plus dal combination dishes are a very common pattern, right? So there is a khichdi in the north, there's Bisi Bele Bath in Karnataka, Pongal in Tamil Nadu. So you will find this pattern to be very common because again, historically, rice is deficient in some amino acids. Dal has those amino acids. So together, they are a complete protein.
Yes.
Right? For a country that's largely, again, does not consume much animal protein, this is how you ensure that you're at least getting all the essential amino acids.
Yeah, so everything that you're doing, your khichdi basically, which is rice plus dal, also your idli dosa batter, then your dal and rice combination, which is very common.
Rajma chawal.
So all of these combinations basically, when we talk about protein, and especially vegetarian sources of protein, for your body to absorb protein, you need the whole protein together, which is essentially amino acids. And when there's there's incomplete protein, you need it to be complete. And rice and dal, when come together, makes it a complete protein. So when vegetarians are having dal for protein, if had with rice, it's always better, better absorption for your body.
Correct.
So that's also about bioavailability of nutrients. You know.
So obviously, I think once the moment you're pressure cooking, bioavailability improves. Right? The other fun fact is that people get worried by pressure cooker. Dal cooked in pressure cooker is more bioavailable than dal cooked on the open pan. Some people like cooking the dal on the open pan for taste and texture reasons, but honestly, for people who have sensitive stomachs and sometimes dal can be tougher to digest because it has more fiber and so on. Cooking dal in the pressure cooker makes it easier to digest actually.
And why is the reason why it's easier?
It's because the pressure cooking is basically cooking for a shorter amount of time at a higher temperature, and that you actually unlock a lot more of the nutrients, the amino acids there, and you also break the fiber into things that are less likely to cause you bloating, right? So normally some people when they eat whole dals, like full, green moong, chana, rajma and all that, they get bloated.
Yes.
Right? Again, pressure cooking reduces the amount of bloating you will actually get as opposed to when you just cook it for hours. And the other thing is that you use half the amount of cooking fuel.
And time.
You use a pressure cooker. Time.
And then there's this thing about on social media about, when you cook dal and you have a little bit of the foam that comes on top, which also is called maybe scum sometimes. So a lot of people say that when you cook it in a pressure cooker, you're not able to remove it, which should be removed. Otherwise, most common viral video is about that it gives you joint pain. So what's that?
Again, you have to remember that India is huge, and you will find that adoption of pressure cooker in South and East has been for much longer because these are rice eating
states.
States, and then the pressure cooker usage is much higher than in the north. So there are fewer myths about this. So clearly South and East India people do not have joint pains. They've been cooking dal for decades now in the pressure cooker. People think that that scum has these anti-nutrients that you have to remove, right? But in reality, that's a very, 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 very tiny amount. Most of what you see in the froth is just loose protein. And it's very tiny amount. And it makes little or no difference for you removing it. See, back in the day, when we did not have processing plants, right? The dal would have a lot of dirt. It would have a lot of soil. It would have, right? I mean, nowadays we are putting it through factories where it's being industrially polished, right? So there's very little actual dirt and other things that you have to remove. The moment you soak and discard the soaking water, that is where you're removing most of the anti-nutrients. That's why that is important to do. You soak the dal, you remove the soaking water.
So a lot of people also say that you should use that water.
Not this water. You should use the water that you cook the dal in. Yeah, not the soaking water.
So a lot of people, who think about, the water you have soaked the dal in has, got nutrients. It's not that way. It's when you cook it, like when you're soaking chickpeas, remove the water.
Yes.
When you're cooking the chickpeas and the water you get, which is called aquafaba.
Correct.
Basically, that is the water you don't throw out.
Yes.
That is the water you need to consume.
Correct. Aquafaba has the sort of like the almost the binding, the structural properties like a vegetarian egg.
Egg white,
egg white, right? Because it
that's why you can use it in baking. You can just foam it up and it'll just form up like an egg white.
Exactly.
And you use it like that.
Yes.
Also to note, when you're doing dal in the pressure cooker, at that time you are thinking about removing the froth or the scum. But it's the same dal you will grind up and use it in a dosa or an idli. So you're not getting that chance to remove it. It still is there, right? So how does it then does not make a difference in that time?
See,
you need to think about it.
One broad, observation for your audience, which is that most of the scaremongering you will see on social media, they will ignore something that I call the denominator, meaning that in reality, if there are anti-nutrients in dal that you need to remove, they are going to be such a tiny fraction but the social media reel makes it seem like that tiny fraction is important. But it doesn't tell you that there is just so little of it that you should not be worrying about that.
So, little bit of turmeric in this.
Yes.
And little bit of salt.
Yeah.
And we use a pressure cooker, bring it to pressure.
Yes.
And then we'll cook it for about, I think, 15 minutes.
15 minutes, yes.
It should be done. So while this is cooking, I have, certain things which we do in our day-to-day lives, right?
Yes.
Like in the morning today when I came here, my wife had soaked 5 almonds for me, which she does every single night.
Yes.
And in the next day morning, you peel off the almonds and then you eat it, right?
Yes.
They used to also do walnuts like that. Yes. And then I had this opportunity like about 10 years back to go to California.
Correct.
The government invited me to see their farms and everything. And there is where there were a few scientists who worked with those farmers.
Yes.
Right? And my first question to them was, after they told me about what are the benefits of walnuts and everything, that should you soak walnuts?
Correct, yeah.
And they said like absolutely not, because a lot of nutrients would be lost in the water.
Yes.
And what you're eating would be less nutrient rich than the actual walnut itself.
Exactly.
What best you should do is, because you live in India, you have such kind of weather, you always store walnuts in the freezer. Freeze them. Because walnuts don't have moisture, they have oil, they would never get frozen.
Correct.
So you can remove and consume it immediately. You don't need to even thaw it because it will never get frozen. And what that will do is, you can keep your walnuts available in your home for a much more longer period of time and would be more nutrient rich. That is what you can do. So walnuts is something that I got this first on experience with. But there's this debate about, the other nuts. Especially almonds are the most common which are soaked. And people say that there are more nutrients than available. Is there any science behind it, or?
So all the nuts broadly work the same way. Again, the same first principles question is, by soaking, what are you gaining and what are you losing, right? The normal argument tends to be that, like with dal, you are removing the anti-nutrients, which will make it harder for you to digest. So by soaking it, it makes it easier to digest is the normal logic that people will give, and so on, right? But when you put that to the test, like with walnuts, the study was done on almonds, it's the same. One, you do not lose any of the anti-nutrients, but you do lose some of the actual nutrients, right? So the confusion comes from the distinction between dal type seeds, right, and also including sunflower seeds, melon seeds and things like that, and these kind of nuts. These nuts are different. These are high fat, low moisture nuts which have a different nutritional profile. Soaking them does not do the same thing that soaking dal does. You need to soak dal because that actually removes anti-nutrients, but it does not do so for almonds. The other way to think about it also is that, but we've been doing this for years. Surely there must be a reason, etc. When you dig into it, you find that many people do not digest the outer fiber skin very well. It's not, by the way, it's mostly not digested. It's going to your gut bacteria, right?
Yeah.
And mostly and so on. And many people cannot eat a lot of almonds, especially with the skin.
Yeah.
Right. So soaking and removing that skin, absolutely, one, makes it easier to digest, and two, older people find it easier. They don't have strong teeth, and so it's just easier for them. So I've again noticed that many of the cooking and choices and the things that you see in Ayurveda, etc., in India are often quietly designed around an assumption that we live in a joint family and that many of the people who are eating are going to be old people. And old people do not produce enough saliva, they have weaker teeth. So, whereas in the West, people don't live with their parents and they live separately. So, many of these practices did not emerge there and so on, right? We cook everything to a little bit softer texture and so on. You're almost always feeding someone who's elderly in the house, right? So again, I urge people to say that I think there are beautiful things about your tradition that you can recognize. But at the same time, the science can also tell you that there is no measurable benefit for a young person to soak their almonds and eat, because you're less likely to have any problems digesting it. And in all likelihood, you're probably wasting nutrition. And the other thing is that it's extra effort you have to take. As you said, if it's just there in the freezer, take it and eat it. You will eat almonds more regularly and that's good for you. But if you have to soak it and you forgot to soak, then you will not eat.
And then to peel.
And to peel, right? See, all of the people remember that convenience is the biggest friend of health. Any habit that you can make convenient, you will follow. Same thing with diet. If it's a diet you can follow, you will follow it. But if it involves complicated things, extra effort, expensive ingredients, avocados and blueberries, the ability for you to sustain it is very low.
But convenience does not mean just to call food for. Convenience means how at home you can do things easily.
Correct, exactly.
That's what convenience is over here in this context.
Yes.
That's very important. Secondly, you talked about blueberries, avocados.
Yes.
So we live in a world of a lot of videos, podcasts, interviews coming out today, right?
Yes.
And there would be one nutritionist, doctor, anyone else.
Yeah.
It could be anyone.
Yes.
Not anyone specific.
Yes.
But one person would come out and say
Yeah.
that you should have 80 grams or 100 grams of blueberries every day.
Yeah.
The next person would come and say, blueberries are just, marketed well. Because they're expensive. They can afford to do that.
Yes.
So you should not eat that because it's just expensive, but there's, these many times of vitamin C or something in, guava.
Yeah.
And you should eat that.
Guava. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Now, for the regular people, right, when they are consuming so much of content every single day, for them, the day someone comes and speaks about blueberries, the next day they'll see, क्या हम ये भी खरीद के खा सकते हैं? Let's start eating.
Yes.
And usually we'll tell it to our friends, family members, I read it somewhere. It's not the real, but I read it somewhere.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then the next time something opposite to that is said, then they'll start to think about, अरे यार इसने तो हमको इतनी ब्लूबेरी खिला दी, अब यही जगह पर कोई आके बोल रहा है कि हमको अमरूद खाने हैं. Right? So, how can someone identify what's right for them and what is wrong for them in a world where we are consuming so much content.
Yeah.
In fact, right now also while we talk, people
Yes.
are consuming content.
Yes.
How does someone believe or come to know what's good or bad for them is something I'm trying to understand since a long time.
This is a very complicated question, and I've thought about it for a long time now, right? And I've spoken to a lot of nutritionists and doctors. The way I see it, right? Internet has given you access to infinite information, and technology has made it cheap for anyone to make content. They have to turn on the phone and say something and post, right? And the algorithm will push it to you if it is sensational. So people need to distinguish when it comes to health and nutrition that there are three things. There is content, there is knowledge, there is advice. Okay? Everything you see on social media is content. It is not knowledge. Knowledge takes decades. It takes.
So we have the whistle. I'll just put it on slow. Yeah.
Knowledge takes decades of research, centuries of people scientifically validating, putting it into textbooks, right? Something to go in a textbook. It takes a lot of people to agree with it and so on. So for most people, you need to be a specialist, you need to be a qualified person, you need to have someone who would have studied that for a while for it to become a scientific knowledge. That is knowledge. Nothing you see on social media is knowledge, it's content. Even the nutritionist saying you should buy blueberries is making content. The textbook that he read in 4 years and 5 years, that is knowledge. Knowledge is not social media friendly. You need to sit and study that. It's not for everyone, right? So you have to look at content and take it appropriately, not too seriously. Just because somebody says don't do this, don't stop doing it. Just because somebody says buy blueberries, you don't have to buy it. It's a useful provocation, it gives you some hints, but don't take it seriously, right? So content, knowledge. The third thing is advice. Advice is important particularly because there are now a lot of doctors and nutritionists who are putting out content. People are confusing content with advice. Advice requires that they look at your body, your blood test, your genetics, your history, and then give you personal advice that is purely private, right? So that advice is going to be unique for everyone. Everybody is unique. So what they put out as content is not advice. So I think half the confusion comes and a lot of your anxiety can go away if you just look at anything on social media and realize that this is content. It's not knowledge, it's not advice.
So what you're trying to say is that whatever you are consuming today on the internet, don't just follow it blindly.
Absolutely.
That is the first thing. Second, there's no particular way of putting things under one umbrella that works for everybody.
Not possible.
So it's going to be different for every single person because you are made in a different way.
Exactly.
Your genes are different. You come from a different region. If you have problems, right? If you have health problems, the first thing you do is stop watching content and go to a doctor.
Exactly. You seek out advice, not
so
content.
That's the most important thing. If you want to know that will blueberries or guava work for you, and you have the time and the money to actually go to a nutritionist who is a practitioner, who is well qualified, go to that person and ask that person if that is good for me or not. The second wrong thing that we do is that my brother or my sister or my mother went to a doctor or a nutritionist and they were advised to do something. We usually tend to take that advice and apply it to ourselves.
Correct.
That's the most wrong thing to do. If someone has gone to a doctor, the doctor or the nutritionist has advised them to do certain ways according to their body, not yourself. So if you need advice, don't take advice from someone who has taken advice, but go to the doctor again, and that would be different for you whether you are living in the same family. So that is something you need to understand. So people who are scaring you on social media or people who are telling you things are good for you, watch it as content.
It's content,
but go and seek advice whenever necessary. That is what is very important.
And I empathize with people because it's India. We're not uniformly rich. Everybody cannot walk up and get an appointment with a nutritionist or a doctor to ask simple questions like this. That capacity is very scarce. So it is not surprising that people are using content as almost as a backup for a health system that is not easily available to everyone, right? But I think it is still important for you to realize that you are still consuming something that has not been validated. See, anybody can open their phone and say anything they want, right? But for it to go into a medical or a nutritionist textbook, 100 people have to review it. Everybody is allowed to critique, and it has to pass a lot of checks before it gets printed, right? And you have to, and for somebody to give you advice, they have to go through years, decade of training, certification, and all that process.
Right.
So you have to treat it exactly like that. You have to treat content like fast food, and you have to treat knowledge and advice like the more ghar ka bana healthy food, and maybe advice as the food that is made very specifically for you when you are falling sick.
Yeah. So a lot many times is what I also usually say, that if you want to eat healthy, you can continue eating what your forefathers, grandmothers, everybody had and consumed. Consume it in a portion controlled manner, and also consume what works for your body, right? And how much ever you can include home cooked meals in your diet, that's the best thing that you can do.
Correct.
Even if you want to have like something fried, fry it yourself. You know what oil you are using, what are the ingredients you are using.
It's been reused.
And then you need to then decide how many times you want to have that at your home. So that is where you will realize, because what happens is when you go out and eat a samosa, right? You just eat the samosa. But when you actually make it at home, that is when you realize the amount of things that are going into it. So once you fry samosas yourself, you will say, no, this is really good, but I should have it once a month because I'm frying it in so much of oil.
Right.
So
and
you
the
realize
oil that
when
went into the dough itself, right? To make it crispy.
So so the best way also to eat healthy is try to cook yourself. If you have the time.
Absolutely.
You will start to understand your food better. And you will realize that, अरे यार इसमें तो बहुत तेल है, मुझे कम खाना चाहिए. Because when something is just available out there, you don't know what's going into it. And suddenly now you see where I'm not talking about the marketing bit of it, that everybody is talking about protein. That happens, and I think that's a result of what's just working out right now in the markets, and people start to talk about it. But also big brands and companies now doing more protein products, like a lassi, a chas and everything, like a kulfi even. There are brands who have idli and dosa batter with added protein into it. There are ice creams with whey protein in it. So there are so many products now available which have added protein in them, right? And suddenly now everybody started to think that is protein that much important in everything they are having? Like even when they are having ice cream, should they have protein? Like even with cold coffee now there's protein, right? If someone's having a regular Indian diet, which we have, which is our dal, roti, bhaji, chapati, pickle, dahi, achar, and all of that, right? And also a non-vegetarian is having meats. Does that person necessarily need to have protein in their ice cream, milkshakes, cold coffee, dosa batter, everything?
Not at all. Again, there's a certain social media distortion here at play, right? The algorithms tend to, if you express an interest in something and if you consume some content, they'll show you more of it. So if you are urban, reasonably well-to-do, the top 5% of wealth in India, chances are that you're going to be assaulted by protein advertising everywhere because the algorithm has decided that you're the right audience for it.
And you can also spend for it,
And then you have the ability to spend for it, right? It's not your a person who's a security guard or the Swiggy delivery guy. He's probably not seeing protein advertisements as much as you are, right? That's number one. The second thing is,
I'm going to switch this off now.
The second thing, again, in general, the most sensible, practical thing for you to do is to realize two things. One is that our historical diet has always been a little bit higher on the carb side, right? Even meat eaters do not eat meat 3 times a day. It's a special occasion, weekend mein banta hai, Sunday mutton type of thing.
Right.
It's never a daily thing. Even seafood eaters who do eat seafood every day the fish curry will have like 2 pieces.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
you're
the
not
rest of
getting
the curry and the rice and the
rice, right? Still mostly carb heavy, right? So India mein vegetarians, non-vegetarians, there's actually not much difference in the net number of grams of protein they're eating in India, right? But we were living largely as an agricultural society with a lot of physical activity. Even if you're not in agriculture, you have to walk to school, you have to cycle, you have to lot of physical labor that you have to do justified the kind of high carb diet that you historically had. British colonialism played a big role in shifting our diets away from better grains like millets that are a little bit better on protein and more balanced, more fiber, to a more refined grain diet of rice and wheat.
And slowly
all of that,
release
we have that
like
baggage,
sugar,
right? And we have a history of famines made worse by the British, where the South Asian genetics is that extra khana is turned into fat immediately, and that too visceral fat. So we are amongst the most susceptible to heart disease and diabetes, more than others. An Indian person will not look obese, but will be diabetic. There will be very obese people in the West who will still not be diabetic. So given all these conditions, it's the broad realization that our diet needs to be less on carbs and more on protein. Because the research says that it's the best thing for you in terms of, one, pehle to 70% of the calories of protein is what you ultimately get. 30% is just used to digest it. Then protein goes into repairing your body. Every joint pain. The moment old people in India just increase protein consumption, their joint pains go away. Hair starts growing, right? So body prioritizes protein for organ damage, deprioritizes hair, deprioritizes joints, and over time, right? And the ICMR and the National Institute of Nutrition has also said that Indians do not eat enough protein. You need to eat at least 0.8 to 1 gram per kg of body weight, right? This has started a gold rush, marketing rush, because there is awareness that I will sneak protein into ice cream, protein into kulfi, protein into coffee and all of that. When again the practical advice is that you please measure how much protein you're getting. There's a good chance you're probably getting 30 to 40 grams from just your dal, chawal, roti, sabji without even adding paneer. And then now you think how you can improve it with food. Very simple, few extra pieces of paneer. If you can afford it, Greek yogurt, or if you can't, just an extra bowl of dahi. Again, dairy is a great source, quality source of protein, right? If you like tofu, add tofu. Like soya nuggets, add soya nuggets. These are fantastic ways to integrate that into your cooking, right? On top of that, if you still feel you are not able to hit the number, for that alone, feel free. Get a protein shake, get a supplement, get a protein bar, I don't know, protein ice cream if you want. So you replace your regular dessert with that. Again, remember, protein ice cream is still an ice cream. Okay? Don't treat it as your protein source, right? So a lot of that I feel is sort of is posturing and marketing. You're just fooling yourself. You must get as much of your protein from food, not as a supplement. If you can't meet that extra, please go ahead. Don't believe all the scaremongering about whey protein.
Supplement is a great
Supplements
choice.
are fine. Right? Yeah. Buy a trusted brand, and only for that balance you eat that. I think that's the best way to think about it.
So again, knowing how much protein you're already consuming.
Yes.
Very important.
Yeah.
Also for a lot of people who don't have a healthy eating habit, who are having fried foods very regularly, who are indulging on food, you have how much ever protein, it won't matter, because the other, the wrong foods which you are having are going to damage your body even more.
Yeah.
If you want to eat everything and now you're having 2 shakes of protein, it's not going to help you. So you need to overall have a better healthy diet, which is balanced and which is more home cooked and which has a balance of everything. So vegetarians, you have to have like your dals, pulses, lentils, rice, veggies.
Add more eggs. It's very simple, straightforward. One of the most, the thing that people regularly makes people angry. But I find that there's more acceptance now. I keep arguing that you should treat eggs as vegetarian.
Yeah. So I've heard about it a lot many times on all of your, in a lot of your content. You say that eggs are vegetarian.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
See, first, I think, what is vegetarian? Is that a scientific definition or a cultural definition? When you realize that vegan is a very straightforward definition, it cannot be of animal origin. It's very clear. There is no confusion there. Vegetarian is a more weird cultural definition. Eggs are vegetarian in the UK, but they're not vegetarian in India, right? So these are cultural.
So are eggs labeled as vegetarian in UK?
Yes, they are. Okay. Eggs, vegetarian menu will include eggs, right? So there are good reasons for why we used to consider it non-vegetarian in the past, but we should not now, right? Think about it. If you consider milk to be vegetarian, you're getting it out of an animal, right? But you will argue that it is vegetarian because it does not result in the death of something. So it is vegetarian, right? Right, you're giving the calf enough milk, the cow is fine, it's anyway producing milk, you're taking the extra, so it's fine. So there's a moral aspect to it, so therefore, there is no killing involved, so therefore. Historically, where a hen would lay an egg every day, you have no way of knowing whether the hen mated with a rooster, with a male. When that happens, the egg is fertilized. Right? And so if you leave it, after a while, the chick will hatch from it. Thereby the feeling that, oh my God, you're probably eating something that might hatch into a chicken, so therefore you're killing something, so therefore it is non-vegetarian, was a perfectly fine thing to say 100 years ago. If you buy a supermarket egg, it comes from poultry farms where there are no male roosters. The hen is just laying an egg every day, right? That egg is unfertilized. You can sit on it all you want, it is not going to hatch into any chicken. Right? It is a product, it's producing no different from milk every day, right? Modern day breeds of hen produce like 200, 300 eggs a year, right? They will produce it whether you eat it or not, and they will not hatch into chickens. So therefore, by the same argument that milk is vegetarian, egg should be vegetarian if you buy it from a supermarket. But if you have hens running around freely, organic, free range, then you have no way of knowing for sure whether it is fertilized or not fertilized. But if you buy it from a supermarket, you should treat it as vegetarian. But I'm not saying you must. There are cultural barriers. You may simply not like it. May not like the smell. You want to respect your tradition, by all means. But if you're a young person who is looking to increase their this thing, and yet you also want to remain vegetarian in that sense of not killing something, I'm telling you, when you eat eggs, you're killing absolutely nothing.
And also, like how you said that, that in India, we have a lot of cultural beliefs, and we all should respect that. You should respect it, I should respect it, it's fine.
Yes.
But I also see a lot of non-vegetarians not consuming enough of eggs.
Yes.
Right? To know that any protein supplement you buy, compared to that, egg is one of the cheapest and one of the most convenient means to add protein to your diet.
Absolutely.
So an egg that, which you can buy today and maybe just boil it, maybe just crack it, gets ready in like a minimum of about 30 seconds to a maximum of about 10 minutes. And you can have how much ever you want of it. And get your daily source of like at least about 20-30% of protein with just eggs in the first meal of your day itself.
Exactly. 3 eggs in the morning, you're done. I mean, you get 18 grams, right? And people forget that, see, our bodies evolved to eat complete foods that naturally occur in nature, right? Whey protein supplement doesn't occur in nature. You have to take milk, you have to process it, and just only keep the protein and remove everything else. Whereas egg is something your body evolved to digest. It has a mixture of protein and fat soluble vitamins and minerals. As a package, it's the cheapest complete food you can eat. And it takes 30 seconds to cook, right? You can, by the way, you can boil a large batch of eggs and put it in the fridge, right? Or you can just break an egg and in 30 seconds, it's going to, you can make a scramble, you can make a sunny side up, you can make an omelette. You have such flexibility. It's the easiest way to add a protein to your diet. You're right,
yeah. There's still pressure? Yeah, there's still pressure. So we have we have time.
Yes. Other important thing, and this is very important to mention, is that if you are increasing your protein consumption, a very important and useful thing to do for your long-term health is to also do weight training. And I particularly want to say this to women, because in India we have this conditioning that somehow women must not do weight training because they will look manly and all of that. That's not how biology works. It's not that easy for women to put on visible muscle, but trust me, the single biggest improvement you can make to your long-term life is to build muscle, because muscle spends the most amount of glucose in your body after the brain, right? and therefore it really prevents you from getting pre-diabetic and diabetic, because that blood sugar high you have from a dal chawal, your muscles will spend all of it. Right? It's the single biggest investment you can make, and people just think it's about bench pressing and all those sort of things. No, there are many things. There are the biggest muscle in the body is the legs. For women to do squats, to add weights, and they have stronger backs, so they can actually do more deadlifts and all of that. There is a 75-year-old woman in my gym who deadlifts 130 kgs. That's more than I can do.
Wow.
Right? And she started when she was 70. All I'm saying is that don't blindly increase protein consumption without also considering exercise.
Right.
Because protein, you can't store protein in your body, you can store fat. If your protein is not getting spent building muscle or sustaining muscle, it's going to get converted into sugar again. Right? So, this is unforgiving in that sense. So I think people should take that seriously. Weight training is for everyone. It's not just for gym bros and young men and and all of that. It's for everyone.
And we also have to remember that the kind of lifestyles our grandmothers or grandfathers had, they had a lot of physical activity throughout the day. They used to walk a lot. They used to do house chores, sweep, mop, all of that.
Amount of squatting. Right? Somebody estimated that 100 years ago, the amount of squats and the holding a squat where you have to just bend down and sweep, bend down and cook and be on that, right? And even, by the way, the traditional Indian washroom also forced you to squat, is that person was getting the equivalent of somebody who spent 20-25 minutes in a gym doing squats. Right? And nowadays we do none of that.
Nothing.
It's the Western washroom, and then we barely squat. We have
vacuum cleaners, mops,
we barely bend down. Or when we get wealthy, we outsource it. Right?
Because if you're going to your office in a car or a bus or a train, and then you are sitting there for about 8 or 9 or 10 hours, and coming back home, eat your food and sleep. You have absolutely done very minimal physical activity. So you need to do your weight training, strength training. Again, you have to remember that you're already in your 50s or 60s. You cannot just suddenly go and hit the gym. You have to again then consult.
You have to do it properly. You have to start walking first, so that you build a good amount of cardio.
But if you are young, you start young, and then you won't have to worry a lot about your health if you are working out and eating good home cooked meals.
Building muscle when you can still build it is going to be the most financially greatest decision you will make. Better than any mutual fund, better than anything else, because the amount of money you will save in healthcare when you are 70 and 80 is just insane.
And then you'll also be able to enjoy the wealth you have created. If you don't have a healthy life later on, then you won't be able to enjoy what you
And by the way, it is not also about gym also, right? You just have to go to the internet and see how you can do body weight exercises.
Home workouts,
just squat. I mean, you can carry, you have things weight, you just sit and squat.
You doing training with your body weight also is not, it's not easy. Like you would
70,
think that,
70 kgs,
if you are just, lifting weights versus you doing your push-ups and squats and all of that, it's equally challenging for your body. So,
all right.
Yes, the pressure is gone, and the rice and dal is perfectly cooked.
In fact, I have a line in my upcoming book that I particularly like, saying that the chair is more likely to kill you than the ghee.
And we'll talk about ghee, because that's something that we Indians love, but it's also something that we all are made really scared of. And then there are people who say that you should just consume ghee in weird amounts. So everything's cooked. The veggies have stayed a little intact because we kept them a little big.
And the salt also helps.
The salt also helps. Now we're going to give it a tempering, sorts of a tempering. So here we're doing ghee. You would use ghee for
Bisi Bele Bath, absolutely. Sometimes for economy reasons, mix of oil and ghee is also used. But normally for Bisi Bele Bath special occasion dish, it's going to be ghee.
And we'll do some nuts. So cashews. And peanuts. I just love the nuttiness it gives to the Bisi Bele Bath. So just kind of frying it a little bit in a little bit of ghee, so that they turn a little golden. So adds in crunch to it, as well as flavor.
Yes.
This is So I know that this is very social media friendly, but I'm going to still ask you about a microwave oven and an air fryer are villainized a lot on social media.
Yes.
And usually to villainize anything,
you
just have to say that this will cause cancer. So that's like the most easiest way to scare people.
Yes.
But last year, ICMR published a document in which it said that a microwave oven is better than any other cooking medium that you can cook in.
Yes.
Microwave oven retains the maximum amount of nutrients in food.
Yes.
So, and this is ICMR basically is a body, it's a government body which publishes
medical
well-researched documents. And this research is done by an Indian government body. ICMR is an Indian
So you don't have
body.
to think like, oh, it's some Western propaganda.
So
no,
it's
from India.
It's from India. And you know, when it was published, a lot of people also spoke about it. But it was lesser spoken about than people speaking about that microwave oven causes cancer. Right?
It doesn't. I think, people will blame literally everything else for cancer except the genuine things that are high risk. Right? It's things like smoking and chewing pan. And or dealing with Delhi in winters, for example, right, in that kind of air.
Even now in other cities,
right? And you're breathing in vehicle exhaust in Indian traffic. Those are such significantly higher risks. Alcohol drinking, right? Those are the genuine risks, and people are worried about microwave and air fryer, which actually are good for you.
Also, air fryer. To actually think about it. It is basically an oven, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you are using OTG ovens, which is oven, toaster and griller, in which you basically have been baking your cakes, cookies, etc. for years. Bakery is something that we all love. Without ovens, we won't have breads, cookies, anything. And even cakes. So an air fryer is exactly the same thing with a fan. So a lot of modern OTG ovens had a fan in them which circulates heat. And those basically are also air fryers.
Absolutely.
Just
it's a naming thing, right?
It's a naming thing.
Air fryer is basically a small oven. Right? So if you think an air fryer causes cancer, then you should not eat any baked good. Right? You should not be baking cakes, pizzas, cookies, and so on.
Because it's the same equipment,
exact same appliance,
smaller form factor with a stronger fan that it circulate heats a little more evenly. And it's more convenient to use because of its form factor, etc.
If you step back and sort of look at history, there is always pushback against new appliances at any given point of time. It's just that our father's generation, their argument was against refrigerators and pressure cooker. That has gone down now. Now we have switched to the uncles on WhatsApp are now on air fryer and microwave.
Air fryer, microwave and cooking materials.
One generation from now, we will all sit back and laugh at the fact that we were worried about this, because there will be some new set of, maybe a cooking robot that is perhaps making your food. That will be now the new cause of problem, saying that you're outsourcing cooking to a robot, and that's why you are having issues and so on. I think it's just it's natural that we have a fear of the new when it comes to food. At the end of the day, you're putting it into your stomach. It has effect on you. But once you see this, I think it becomes.
And I think with cooking materials, so this is done. So I'm just going to strain this and remove, because otherwise it will burn very quickly.
Yes, especially the cashew.
Because
it'll stay white and then suddenly become.
Yes. That's what I realized while talking now. So these are fried. We are going to keep it on the side. And then we are doing the tadka. But before that, with cooking materials, I love how always you put convenience, into picture. And I think choice of cooking materials is all about convenience, right?
It's about convenience,
stainless steel is one of the safest choice because it does not react at all with any kind of food. So you don't need to think about if you're doing anything sour. You can also keep the food in that pan. And then reheat it in it, no problem. While for sour ingredients, if you are doing that in tin or maybe aluminum, you won't want to leave it for a longer period of time and then reheat it in it. And stainless steel does not rust. So again, maintenance is
absolutely
at the lowest. So you don't have to maintain it at all. the maximum it is going to do is the kind of fat and everything that's going to stick on your outside walls.
Yes.
And because of that direct heat, it's going to like just stick. That too, you can just clean it with any kind of a liquid or maybe baking soda.
I mean, if you didn't want to think and you wanted to pick one material, it's stainless steel.
That is stainless steel.
Yes.
But then, if you are someone who likes to enjoy cooking, right?
Yes.
Then there are cooking mediums which will enable you to cook better in terms of different kind of dishes that you are making.
Correct.
Like a cast iron tawa would get you the best dosas ever, which cannot be replicated on any other kind of material.
So the heat transfer and that is absolutely.
So that's the best cooking medium for a dosa.
Yeah.
But the downside of it, you have to season it so that the dosa does not stick.
Yes.
And two, every time you use it, you need to coat it with oil, keep it so that it does not rust.
It's a lot of maintenance.
So convenience is less,
Yes.
better result. No, you have to choose.
Yeah.
You want convenience, you want better result,
Yeah.
or you want to maintain it, not maintain it. Correct. A cast iron pan can live with you for 20 years.
Absolutely.
You know, it won't spoil at all.
Yes.
And then you have your copper utensils or brass utensils were used always.
Yes.
They need a coating of tin, jisko
Yes.
kalai bolte hain.
Yes.
If your tin wears off, you have to recoat it.
Yeah.
If you're not coating it, you're cooking your sour things in it.
Yeah.
It's going to...
The other thing is that a lot of tin in general in nature tends to occur along with lead. No matter how much processing you do, some amount of lead also gets into that.
Yes.
Right. And again, you also want to avoid
lead
exposure as well. So while these we like it because they were traditional, because historically we were more of a brass and copper and based society more than iron. We think it's great and so on. But I think from a modernity standpoint, I think you have to think about
with a modernity standpoint, now there are people who have who are making copper and brass utensils with different lining with stainless steel.
Yes.
There's a few brands which also do it with silver.
Yeah. Yes.
But then those become so expensive to a point that you cannot afford them in a regular kitchen.
See, for example, because stainless steel doesn't have great heat transfer, whereas aluminium has fantastic heat transfer.
Yeah.
But aluminium reacts with your food.
Yeah.
There are some expensive materials that are tri-ply.
So
there's like aluminium sandwiched between stainless
steel.
Yeah.
So you have like really good. And that's the most commonly available stainless steel utensils out there, which is tri-ply, which is aluminum sandwiched in between stainless steel.
Again, induction also is just so energy efficient, right?
Yeah.
I again urge people to do as much of your day-to-day stuff on the induction for boiling water, making curries, and use the flame when you need to use the flame. When you need to get that the chapati stuff, and that way. People
otherwise, induction is pretty convenient. Convenient.
Yeah, especially in the sustainability sense. If you have the opportunity to have like solar and all of that, solar and induction means you're cooking for free.
Yeah.
Right. Then your gas cylinder can last like almost a year sometimes, right? If you're frugal about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is do the tempering now.
Yes.
So we're doing mustard seeds, rye. So mustard. And then we do curry leaves.
Yes, which will splutter. So, yes.
And like a couple of dried chilies, a little bit of hing.
One thing I would typically add is the South Indian small onion.
Oh yeah, that we use in sambar.
Yeah,
and that would go in this tempering.
That would go just in the tempering.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
So next time I'm doing that, we're going to add it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one thing that now I've learned from you.
Yes.
So we are just cooking the green peas a little bit over here.
Yeah.
Because the tomatoes and the bell pepper is not going to take a lot of time to cook. So we just cook the...
And by the way, if you like green peas, you should just buy frozen and use it all year. It's a fantastically healthy way to add high quality protein and fiber to your diet.
Yeah. So now tomatoes and a little bit of green bell peppers. This is something that I like a lot. Yeah.
Oh, green bell peppers also add a lovely flavor.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And I love when it stays a little crunchy and it's not like very overcooked.
Yes. Almost always add even when you're making like North Indian sabji and you want to add the Shimla mirch, you add it at the end.
At the end, so you just sometimes you will also just saute the onions and bell peppers together, and then add it in the end for some crunch. Yeah. So once the veggies are cooked a bit, we're doing some soaked tamarind pulp.
Yes.
for the sourness, and little bit of jaggery for the balancing
Contrast.
of flavors over
Yes,
here.
and it amplifies every other flavor.
Yeah.
also. Yeah.
And by the way, like I keep talking about this, but maybe you can put a little more light on this, that a lot of people think that jaggery is much better than sugar, and a lot of people keep asking about, can I replace sugar with jaggery or honey or whatever, but
Sugar is sugar.
yeah, sugar is sugar, and the body.
So the moment it all goes inside, no? It's all glucose, it's all fructose, it's all sucrose. It doesn't matter where it came from, organic, non-organic, whatever, single source, none of that matters. Sugar is sugar. And I think what people don't realize, actually, jaggery has a higher glycemic index than regular white sugar. I mean, if you're diabetic, you should reduce both.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think, again, it's that whole bias that somehow, since we've known jaggery for a while, it must be better than something that came out of a factory, right? And I think the broader message also is that sometimes I find that we as a population, we love food so much that when these health issues like diabetes and heart disease come, they force you to think about food differently. And we find it hard to make changes, right? So we go after quick fixes. Those quick fixes don't work. So we think, I will avoid maida and therefore I will be healthy. I will replace sugar with jaggery and therefore I'll be healthy. You are just fooling yourself, right? You are making no measurable change to your diet, but you've convinced yourself psychologically that you are making healthier choices. The harder thing to do is to eat less food or to reduce carbs, increase.
Start exercising.
Those are hard things to do. And by the way, how much content can somebody make that keeps saying the same thing?
Yeah.
People have to tell you new things. They'll say, no, don't do jaggery, do palm jaggery.
Yeah.
Don't do palm jaggery. This is some special jaggery that comes from here, right? Or this variety of sugarcane is better. So I think, people just have to be sensible about it.
And then there are going to be lesser Krish Ashoks than people who are going to, do much more scaremongering on social media.
Yeah, because there are so many things you can make new content to scare about. No?
Yeah.
Good advice is very simple.
No, and the thing that works on social media is that if you just pick up a line and say that instant noodles is healthy, or jaggery is much better than sugar.
Yeah.
What you have been doing till date is wrong. Or this is what you should do.
Yes.
That just picks up.
It picks up,
on social media, and that's why it's made.
Yeah, fear works.
Fear works.
Fear gets attention. It's the reason why the newspaper headlines are not. Today there was no crime. Is not a headline.
Yeah.
The crime is the headline.
Yeah.
But when you see every day and you see crime, you think crime is increasing. But in reality, crime is rare. So you have to, again, same content. It's content. News is content.
Absolutely. So we have cooked down the tamarind a bit to let the rawness of the tamarind just go away.
Yes.
And just flavors also deepen a little bit.
Yes.
Now we need to add our rice, dal and veggie mixture to this tempering. And now also is the time where
the magic of the
we'll add
this is where the quintessential color comes from.
Yeah, the flavor and color.
Yes.
So we'll do like a couple of spoons of masala. Just add in a little bit of hot water.
Hot water.
Just give it a mix.
Yes. That way it mixes easily into the
So we just add the whole. So just mixing in all the spices now.
And the red capsanthan from the Veganism chilies, right?
Yeah. And this smells so good.
Yeah. This is
so
perfect. Yes.
At this stage we do the dhania on top.
Of course. Are you a little dhania person or a lot of dhania person? I'm a
lot of dhania person. I can just eat dhania like this.
There's like 15% of the population that cannot tolerate.
They feel like
it's a genetic thing. So there is a gene that gives you extra sensitivity to certain aldehydes.
Yeah.
And this has those. But for people who don't have that gene,
they enjoy it.
They absolutely enjoy it. For everybody else, it tastes like soap.
Yeah.
But that aldehyde goes off the moment you crush the leaf.
Oh.
So in green chutney, that's why the people who cannot tolerate this are absolutely okay.
Yeah, but I've seen those people loving pani puri.
Exactly.
Oh.
Right. So it's crushed. The moment it's crushed, that aldehyde is gone.
Oh, I knew that a lot of people cannot eat.
Yeah.
But I used to always wonder how can then they eat chutney or a pani puri.
It's because that aldehyde is volatile.
Okay, got it.
So there's little of it moment you crush it in a...
Got it.
Yes.
So we'll just give it a little bit of taste.
Make sure
100%
that
salt is going to be less because we added only in the beginning.
Only the beginning, but actually...
Yeah, it just needs salt. Everything else is good.
Yeah, other than salt, I think it's...
A little bit of hot water because the starches are just cooling down now.
Yeah, and they'll gelatinize. Yeah.
So this will help mix. One kind of reel which has been, pushed out a lot is about fruit juices, right?
Yeah.
Where there are people who have been saying that fruit juices are absolutely something that should not be had. It's also compared to, packed beverages, etc., right?
Yeah.
Now, is fruit juice really bad for you?
What is accurate is the fact that it is generally healthier for you to eat the fruit than drink the juice. And within that, there are distinctions. If you pulp the whole fruit and don't filter out any of the fiber and you drink that, that's better than if you just take the liquid part of the fruit and you throw away the fiber, which can sometimes happen in the packed juices, which will not have the pulp. In those situations, yes, you're mostly just drinking the sugar. You left all the good parts of the fruit out, thrown it away, and then you're only drinking the sugar. That's not too different from drinking any kind of sugary beverage, again with some context. If you are tired, if you're exhausted, and you just need some calories, that's still a better choice than drinking anything that's purely synthetically pure carbonated water, right? An orange juice is still better than that, right?
And with juices, in hospitality school as well, and even, juice glasses always used to be this small.
Yes.
Never were big. But now everybody is started to have like this big glasses with juice.
Yes. You're drinking sugar, right?
So
you need to
portion control over there. It's very important. Yes. So I have a lot of things to ask, but one last thing before we, finish this is on a recent podcast you said one thing where you said that you think that vegans are the most dumbest people, right? Now, till now, anything that I have asked you was not controversial at all.
Okay.
Yeah. But do you think that that's too harsh to, say?
No. So one is that I think, if I remember right, I tend to be critical about vegan activists and not vegans. There's a very clear difference, right? I find vegan activists to be regularly annoying and often deliberately ignore the realities of India. The reason I feel that way is particularly that a lot of the activism is based on a very Western reality, right? The Western reality is that they consume an unholy amount of animal protein that people should not be consuming. Like they're eating meat like 3 times a day. And they should be eating less protein. And the act of the manufacturing of animal protein in large cattle farms and pig farms is terrible for the planet from a carbon footprint standpoint. That much is very obvious, non-controversial. And again, the level of industrial scale cruelty that you have to do in that kind of giant farms is also, I can absolutely understand why you want to sort of protest against that and create a movement where you want to encourage people to avoid animal products and so on. So I kind of get that, right? But when I find that being transplanted to India, you're coming to a part of the world where people barely eat animal protein. Indians simply do not eat that much animal protein. Our per capita consumption is so low. And in a country where people actually should be eating more, right? So my point is that I would care more about human cruelty in India of people not getting enough protein before I'm going to care about animal cruelty. At least that's my opinion, right? Indians need to eat more paneer, more eggs, more chicken, more fish. Get ourselves healthy so that we're not stunted, we're not short, we're not diabetic. And then when we reach a level of wealth where animal husbandry becomes a problem for you from a carbon footprint standpoint, by all means, yes, encourage people to adopt other means, right? So the problem is that in India, if you're saying don't eat eggs, don't eat milk, where are people going to get their protein from? Soy. Do people like soy? Ask your own audience. How many people like eating tofu and is it easily available to people in India? So I think what I find is that this cherry picking of just focusing on animal cruelty while ignoring the reality, human reality of India is really what I find annoying from an activism standpoint, right? But that said, I think there are one of the things, I follow a lot of vegan food creators who come up with very creative ways to make Indian food. The beauty of Indian food is that you can make astonishingly delicious vegan food, unlike the West, right? In fact, a lot of the vegan dishes that are becoming popular in the West tend to be borrowed from
India.
From India, yeah. Right? So I think there is in your diet, if you go vegan, you're naturally going to consume more vegetables. This is great for you, right? You're going to go consume more plants, right? The general advice that eat as many plants as possible. While you do that, get enough protein, etc., etc. Reduce saturated fat, right? Reduce ultra processed food, right? Should be the broader guideline, and you get that in the way you can afford it. If that means getting your protein from chicken because that's what is practical for you, by all means, right? If that means getting it from paneer, by all means.
Right. Yeah. Indian food majorly is naturally vegan in a lot of sense. Like
everybody is mostly vegan.
Yeah. If you remove the ghee from this recipe today, it's a vegan recipe, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you can absolutely do it with gingerly oil and it will taste as better.
Absolutely.
But but to get that additional protein, if you're just having this, you need some kind of paneer, some kind of tofu, some kind of egg or meat. Now that is your cultural choice, personal choice to choose from.
Right.
If you can afford, you buy anything else which is vegan but gives you as much protein. No problem in that. But if you cannot, then these are the best natural means which are readily available in your country. And you should not stop having it to lead a healthy life. That's important,
right? I think that's why I find the arguments that when vegan activists say that vegan food is healthier, or that you can get all your protein from non-animal sources, they're completely ignoring the Indian reality. Right? And I think you make your choices, and if you get your protein from whatever source that you are culturally comfortable with, that's the morally right thing to do. Yeah.
Great. I think I would go on till maybe dinner, but we've been cooking this Bisi Bele Bath for a long time now. So I don't think so I've ever cooked Bisi Bele Bath for so long. So let's see how it tastes.
This is the longest time that I have spent standing in front of the thing, but whereas somebody else was doing most of the cooking as well.
No, but it's been a pleasure. So we're done with our, cooking over here. So we'll now plate it, right? And like as a carrier so that it does not fall. So a lot of people ask me, because I keep cooking so many recipes, that what is my comfort food and what do I like to eat at home? And this answer always takes people by a surprise, that I can eat like curry and khichdi for like all lunch meals throughout the week. I just love it. Any kind of curry khichdi. I love Gujarati curry khichdi because where I grew up in Mumbai, there was this Gujarati community around, and I got introduced to that flavor very early as a kid. So it's very nostalgic for me, so I love it. And this is also one such recipe. It's a khichdi, but a much more. So ये वो बीमारों वाली खिचड़ी नहीं है. It's a very wholesome.
It's a very celebratory.
Celebratory wholesome khichdi. Add some coriander. A little bit of this crispy bundi on top. And the nuts.
This is what the kids in the family will immediately finish off.
Let's see how this has turned out.
This is the slowest cooked Bisi Bele Bath.
Let's go. Always hits the spot. And I just love those textures about, that mushiness of some veggies, the tomatoes and the capsicum later on, which we've just cooked a little bit. And then the bundi and the nuts taste really good. Yeah. So that's it, guys. Yeah, and you can see that it's very tasty. And for everyone who's not read Masala Lab yet, I would urge you to read it. It's a very interesting book about how what our ancestors or grandmothers or grandfathers have been cooking for so long, the kind of things they have been doing in Indian kitchens, and also what we do today. A lot of it with a lot of science backing, with a very simple language which everybody can understand. You don't need to be a student of science to really read that book. So guys, read the book. I'll leave a link in the description box below, and it's going to be one of the most interesting reads if you love food. Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you, and I think this would have gone on for longer, but I think we could do that next time with a different recipe.
Yeah, a dish that actually takes 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, maybe, yes. And I hope you guys enjoyed. You guys got some thing to hear about food, which maybe you might not have heard about before. But as a disclaimer, I always tell this, that whatever we have spoken about, though it comes from science backing, a lot of reading, whatever, if you are an individual who is suffering from a disease, who has a condition, you are trying to do something, you are trying to lose weight, gain weight, live healthy, you always should consult a practicing doctor, nutritionist, to take those decisions for yourself, because every individual is unique, is different, and your needs are going to be different. So,
as we said earlier, this is content, not knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I think if this whole conversation helped you do that, just share it with your friends and family and enjoy cooking this Bisi Bele Bath. I am dropping the recipe below in the comments or the description. But it was great having you, sir. We'll keep meeting, and I think this also calls for another conversation maybe sometime later. Really looking forward to your new book.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, we'll have some good food now.
Super.
And
let's do that.
Yes. Done.